Hello and welcome to the first Newfound market mission. My name is Isabel Woodford. I'm a fintech journalist at Sifted and I am your MC for what we hope will be an insightful morning ahead. Today marks the debut of Newfound's mission programme aimed at supporting tech companies on the cusp of going global in the middle of a pandemic. The first in the series caters to fintech companies looking to expand to the UK amid the coronavirus shutdown. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to hear advice and insights from those at the forefront of the UK fintech scene. I'll be interviewing founders, investors, analysts, and key organisations working to support the fintech ecosystem. And we're going to hear from a fintech who made the jump themselves to the UK and has lived to tell the tale. You'll be able to join the conversation too. You can submit your own question online by the chat function, and I'll pick up on these across the morning or after the event in the Q&A half an hour. We are also live on Twitter using the hashtag Newfound Market Missions. Please do get involved. Before we get started with the first session in about 5 minutes time, I wanted to quickly introduce you to our host for the day, Peter Gillingwater. Peter is the CEO and founder of Newfound, the global expansion consultancy, and he is based here in London. Hello, Peter.
Isabel, good morning. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Welcome. So let's kick off. And can you sum up your thinking behind the mission today and why we're here?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just wanted to send a thank you to all our panelists and experts that are giving their time this morning. It's much appreciated. And also to the partners that have helped us set up the program in the last number of weeks. And a special thanks to the Newfound team who have burnt the midnight oil both in the UK and Australia to get everything in place. And I'm glad that we're kicking off live when we said we were. And of course, a welcome to everyone who's watching this virtual event live from wherever they are in the world. We have more than 220 registered attendees from 25 countries. So we're very pleased considering we only sent out invites less than 3 weeks ago. And it just shows you that there's real interest in what's happening in fintech during this COVID era, and obviously how it relates to trade and expanding into international markets. So Newfound's particularly proud to have built the first virtual fintech event for firms thinking about coming to the UK and Australia and needing to sort of validate their plans now, because there's opportunities in the marketplace as we speak, despite obviously being in the COVID era. So just quickly, in terms of what Newfound does, we are a consultancy that helps companies validate new markets, helps them build the go-to-market strategy and the plan, and obviously helps them with the hiring piece, which is critical in getting up and running. We were, I suppose, I was about to go on a trade delegation to Australia back in March with London and partners. And of course, COVID cancelled that. And it sort of made us think about what's going to happen with the physical trade missions in the future. And certainly, they're off the agenda for the remainder of this year and quite possibly for some time to come. So then, it made us think that we really had to sort of try and fill that void. There's an opportunity to help companies with their international expansion plans. And we've built this program to be able to sort of support that. So the program's going live in around about 2 months' time in September for the Australian marketplace and for the UK marketplace. And these programs are developed over a 10-day period, around 16 hours of immersive and interactive content. We'll have 30 in-market experts, advisors, and connectors working with us on the program for the companies that are attending that. So after the end of the program, the companies will also have a pitch day and be able to sell and start traction with potential customers within the marketplace that they're going into. And we're inviting fintechs from around the world who wish to consider the UK or Australia as key markets in the future. And I think it's also fair to say that our missions are going to have a very sharp commercial focus. So whilst there's going to be some things around the operational aspects and of course, government support, etc., the real emphasis of our programs is around getting companies to sort of get set up to sell and to get traction and of course revenues, because that's ultimately what it's all about. Also, I think it's fair to say that our model is garnering interest from the various trade and industry organizations we're engaged with at the moment. And we're hoping to deliver our first virtual trade mission on behalf of a government organization that has engaged with us to be able to put together a trade visit to the UK after London Tech Week and to be able to put together a program that enables their set of companies to experience what it's like in London, despite not being able to fly. So that's what we're all about. Please check out the other details on our website, newfound.global. And I'll hand back to you, Isabel. I hope you all enjoy these sessions today, and looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Peter. And obviously fantastic that we've managed to make this virtual, given the circumstances. Anyone wanting to pick up directly with Peter can do so in the Q&A at the end of the morning. With any queries, you just look for the speaker on the attendee list and you can message directly. So let's get started with our first session of the day. We're very happy to be able to bring you one of the key figureheads of the City of London, the Lord Mayor, William Russell. William is the head of the City of London Corporation, which is one of the bodies helping to support UK financial services and London in general. The Lord Mayor has been busy championing London as the European capital of financial services, travelling across the world to spread the word and to support London's position as a key centre of finance and fintech. I met the Lord Mayor earlier as he couldn't be here live, and I asked him why he believes London is a good home for fintech startups and what he's observed over the last 12 months in his role. Here he is. So welcome to the Lord Mayor. We're here with William Russell. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we really want to speak to you basically to get your perspectives on the fintech industry in London. I was wondering if we could kick off with you summarising your impressions of the scene, which has obviously had a dramatic growth in the last 5 years.
Well, firstly, it's not just about London, it's about the whole of the UK. And fintech has had remarkable growth. It employs over 76,500 people around the UK. And I've been to visit fintech companies in just outside Belfast. There's a wonderful company called Fintru in Derry, Londonderry, that employs 350 people. And then there are 126 fintech companies up in Edinburgh. But there's no doubt London is the hub. And we're proud to say we feel we're the fintech centre of the world. And it's just been hugely successful. And the main reasons for that are the ecosystem, the regulatory environment we have, and to be frank, the global talent that London attracts.
Absolutely. I mean, so you really just need to walk around the centre of London. You can see some of the more dramatic buildings of the bigger fintechs. I wonder, just in terms of your interactions, what stood out for you in terms of what the industry is providing, or the nature of some of the individuals at the helm of these companies?
So, I mean, the industry is providing a lot of different functions. I mean, whether there's reg tech, insure tech, I joke that it should be called TechFin anyway, because it's really about the technology. I was on the board of Innovate Finance, which is the association and that looks after all the fintech companies, and the CEO there is Charlotte Crosswell. And I just look across the whole of London, and yes, the big names at the front, whether it's the Revolut or the Monzos, but then behind the scenes you have a wonderful company called Thought Machine that is helping the likes of Lloyds Banks and other banks with their legacy systems. So it is something that we've just been very lucky to have in the city, or very fortunate to have in the city. I don't think there's that much luck involved. As I said, we've been fortunate with the FCA and the way the regulatory environment has been developed, and it covers a lot of different areas. And funny enough, COVID-19 has brought the digitization even more to the fore.
Yeah, and obviously also brought its own challenges, which I'm sure we'll discuss this morning. With that backdrop, in terms of London having come to the front here globally with its fintech industry, it does beg the question what the impact of Brexit might be. Some of the people watching today, I'm sure, will have questions about perhaps how already you may have seen an impact, or just the fintechs having to adjust to that quite significant change.
So back in 2016, when we had Brexit, there was a lot of concern, but and everyone went on and talked about passporting and what effect that's going to have on London, and what effect it was going to have on the fintech sector. I think the effect's been a lot less than people realise. There were doomsayers saying we were going to have 80,000 jobs going in the city. It's probably close to 5,000, and a lot of those have moved to other parts of Europe for obvious reasons, because companies are having to set up offices within the EU. So I'm an optimist. I genuinely believe that we have huge advantages in London with that ecosystem, which I've already described. We have, as I said, a regulatory environment. We have the rule of law. I'm a big culture person, so we have a wonderful city to live in, and it was great news to see that the government stepping up this week with a big package on culture, and that attracts people to London and the UK. And we have a time zone that's favourable. We have a language that's favourable. It's all there, and the Brexit is not going to change any of that. So I'm very optimistic. At the time, I think some people said, if I was starting a company now, knowing what I'm knowing about Brexit, I wouldn't do it in London. But I think even those people have backtracked, saying, London is where it happens.
And I mean, do you have an impression of, you mentioned regulatory conditions, and obviously now companies will have to also have offices in Europe if they want to be a European provider. Do you think that perhaps deters companies who want a European presence, not just a UK presence? Or have you seen companies come headquarter here and just go through the motions in terms of having to get a passport outside of the UK?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're looking at Europe, and their headquarters are here, and some of them, as you know, have offices in London, but actually offices outside the UK. And as far as Europe's concerned, they will adapt accordingly. So yeah, some will set up satellite offices, but the bulk of their employees, and by the way, this is not just fintech, this is the big banks. I mean, I've done goodness knows how many Zoom calls since March with CEOs of big banks, and they're all incredibly optimistic about how they're going to continue to grow their business in London. But and I think that's despite Brexit. But what we've also been able to do is take that fintech knowledge and that regulatory knowledge around the world, and that has helped our fintech businesses through open up in other parts of the world through these fintech bridges that we've created. And I think that's another exciting moment. I mean, America is the holy grail for lots of fintech companies, and we know a few of them are starting to launch there, but it's a different regulatory environment over there as well.
And indeed come over. Obviously, we've had the likes of Plaid, which was bought by Visa for 5 years over. So definitely lots of interesting things to keep us busy with.
Got Robin Hood. Robin Hood's about to launch over here.
They haven't launched yet, but we're waiting eagerly. In terms of how, again, just your impression of the fintech sector, it is often quite an arbitrary label, fintech. You've discussed yourself, maybe calling it tech fin instead. It is still nascent in the sense that the companies driving it are 5-6 years old at the latest, or at the oldest, or the older scale. But do they feel tangibly different to the banks and the older incumbents that have essentially built the financial services industry in London and the UK? I mean, is there, apart from the parties, I'm sure, having a slightly different aura to them, is there a tangible difference here? Does it have this adaptability, youthful mode or mood that people discuss?
No, I mean, I think there is a tangible difference. But let's step back 5 years. So the fintech companies were starting up, and the incumbents were nervous. They saw the fintech companies as disruptors. What are we going to do? They were very anti what was going on. What's happened is that now the incumbents have recognized that they need to adapt, and they've collaborated with the fintech companies. So I'm sure you know this, but Thought Machine, Lloyds Bank owned 10% of that company. Yeah. So a lot of the banks are actually buying into the fintech story. A lot of banks have had to adapt with what they're doing at the front end, and we know how much goes on at the front end. Whether, as I said, some of the new banks, the Starlings and the Revoluts or the Monzos, and 18-year-old daughter has a Monzo account. I think it's because she likes the pink card rather than anything else, she tells me.
You don't have one yourself, William?
Sorry?
Do you not have a Monzo yourself?
No. I'm a Revolut man.
Oh, you do have. Okay.
I do have. Oh yes, no. I've got the. I can show you. I've got the platinum card. Even though they're changed. But what sort of happened is partly to do regulation. A lot of these companies are changing accordingly, but the big banks have done the same, and I think it's there is definitely a generational thing, as you know, and talking about the tangible bit, I think the younger generation are very much into these new fintech companies. And us older generation are getting there. And then I have my 90-year-old father who doesn't even know what fintech is. But even he didn't. He's now doing Zoom. But that's remarkable in itself and what's happened during COVID-19. So I think that the momentum is there. But I think also it has brought forward, talking about the incumbents, their whole strategy, COVID-19, because no one's gone to a branch. And everything's had to be done digital. I think I read an article that said the fastest growth in sign-ups is the over 50 age, and that's and so there has been huge change, and it's positive for the sector, then we can always get on the whole office change as well, because that's going to be different this time around because everyone's been working from home and doing stuff from home. So.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of, so we've discussed obviously the positives and the advantages and the opportunity. In terms of some of the discernible challenges that London might, give to the new international companies, or indeed the local companies, Brexit is one of those. Is there anything else that you think overseas companies may struggle with coming to London? There is this idea that perhaps London can be a bit of an insider boys club even, and that it has very tight networks built from school days. Is that something that you see could be a challenge, or that you have seen evidence of, and something that you might find?
I haven't seen much of that, because I do think that once you're in part of the ecosystem, where you come from, which country you come from, is not relevant, and I do think this digital transformation has got huge momentum. I went to San Francisco in December as Lord Mayor and met a whole lot of VCs, and they were all very keen to invest in the sector, and that's happened. A lot of them are keen to open offices here. I think Sequoia, I don't know where they are with that, but they mentioned it, and I do believe that they recognise that that network is a tight network, and companies are still setting up here, and their investment opportunities, and so I don't see that at all. I think attracting the talent, which means we need to have a good immigration system, is probably more important, to be frank, than Brexit, because I just don't see Brexit being a major issue.
But yes.
Yeah. So, but I do think out of COVID-19, it's interesting how, and you would have watched this when it comes to the C bills and the B bills, how that's been distributed. And I think, the incumbents are the ones doing most of it, and maybe those who are banks. But as you know, many fintech companies are non-bank lenders, and they aren't banks. And how that's gone about, I think there's definitely something we can look at after this is over to work out what we could do a bit better on that front, because you can understand and see why government or even the Bank of England can be conservative in some of their where they distribute the money to be handed out, and that's something which maybe we could look at after this.
Yeah, so I mean, the only other thing I can think of off the top of my head in terms of a notable challenge, if you're a business-to-business fintech, then that offers, it's a different kind of, essentially business is the same internationally, you have an international network, and you provide the business services wherever. The one area I think that could be of concern is perhaps B2C fintechs, and trying to get a grip of the British consumer as it would be their main market.
Yeah.
We saw N26, one of Germany's big neobanks, come over and then retreat. They said it was partly because of Brexit. We know that there were also quite slow uptake with numbers. Yes. So what about the B2C fintechs? We don't want to lay a sheen if there is, it's an obvious challenge that you have to understand the British consumer, but perhaps you can think of ways that, the gaps or areas that B2C fintechs could thrive here, albeit overseas.
They could thrive here. I mean, but you're absolutely right. I think there is that, particularly with what's gone on with COVID, that protection of the consumer and understanding what is about to happen. The bad loan situation, it has made it difficult, and we've seen that with some of the peer-to-peer lenders. Yeah. Obviously Zopa has a bank license, RateSetter doesn't. RateSetter just happens to be talking to Metro Bank. And so, you can see that how that has changed, but no one predicted COVID-19. So everything was going nicely until COVID-19 for many of these fintech companies. So that has been a challenge. Yeah. And I think we'll learn lots of lessons from what's happened. And if anything, we need to pass those lessons back to our friends at government as well. And I'm sure the FCA will be the same. But stepping back on the FCA, coming back to them, it was Project Innovate. It was the regulatory environment, the fact the FCA has a remit to look after the consumer. And remember, fintech really started to come about because of the last crisis. Yeah. And we learned a lot from it, and we've learned a lot now since the last crisis. Hence, it seems that our banks are in much better shape because what we did learn from the last crisis, and that makes us hopefully in better shape going forward, even though the job losses are going to be a lot worse because the financial crisis was more of a financial crisis rather than a COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah,
absolutely. And in terms of very final question, yeah. I will ask you to be fortune teller here as far as you can, but in terms of the next 5 years for the UK and London and the fintech scene, again, it is very hard to know which companies will survive and how the system or ecosystem will evolve. But if you were to, throw your hat into the fortune tellers arena, then could you share, how you see this playing out for the fintech ecosystem?
So I won't pick a company because there are lots of them out there, and I wouldn't want to. There'd probably be bad luck if I did pick any of the companies. I think potentially it plays out very positively, and as I've said, I am an optimist. I'm very optimistic about London. I think London is one of the greatest, if not the greatest city in the world. It's a wonderful place to work, and that global talent, which I've mentioned before, is critical to the success of a lot of our fintechs. And I think government and we at the City of London Corporation definitely recognise that. We would hope that we will still attract all that talent. I think COVID-19 has just brought forward massively that digital transformation, and we need to continue that momentum and take it forward and continue investing. What the Chancellor has been doing around the Future Fund has been very positive. I've had hugely positive feedback about it because without something like that, we'd lose a number of years around our innovation, and we do have innovation that is very strong in this country, whether it's the financial services side or the tech side. So I am optimistic, but I think we need to learn lessons from this particular crisis and how we take that forward. There is a fintech review that's coming out, which I'm sure you know about, hopefully later on this summer, and I'm sure it will address some of those issues. In a way, its timing is great because it can take into account a lot of what's happened, of the issues around COVID-19, and so we'll address some of those. But as I said, I think it's a digital transformation, and it's UK-wide. And that, along with the green agenda, I think the next 5 years can be very exciting.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for joining us, and
it's a pleasure.
Very helpful for our audience, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Same with you. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you.